Hello. I'm Lyceum, the Greek City Times' roving reporter, and I'm here with Donald Robertson. Hello.
Hi.
He is a cognitive behavioral therapist and also a global teacher in Stoicism, amongst other philosophies of the ancient Greeks and Romans. He's going to be telling us about how he combines these teachings, the teachings of psychology, together with the teachings of ancient Greek and ancient Roman philosophy, and how he brings it into the modern world to improve and inspire and educate and evoke thoughts and new perspectives in people today. So first of all, welcome to Athens, because you've just arrived for the first time to Greece. We are, just to introduce you to where we are, I'll give you a little scan here of the location. We're in Navarino Park in Exarchia. This is a community park that was created by the locals of Exarchia. It used to be nothing but an old cement car park, and local people took over the space and drilled holes in the ground and planted trees, and now they've also got food gardens with vegetables and fruits, and they're giving food to the poor. They've made a playground. Anyway, for me, it was an interesting spot for us to do this interview, because it also, like philosophy itself, it represents a way of people to get together and discuss and evoke ideas in each other and inspire new perspectives and new thoughts. Tell us where you're watching us from, because Donald Robertson teaches people all over the world about the Greek, very much about the Greek philosophies, and yet, as you were telling me, you don't have that many Greek students, isn't that right?
Yeah, we don't seem to have that many Greek students. We had a little bit of a discussion about that recently on our Facebook group, and there were some Greeks there, but they also suggested maybe there's a separate group for Stoicism that Greek people use. So I kind of like to see more Greeks engaging actually with the discussions of the Stoic philosophy in particular.
Well, Greek City Times has Greek viewers all over the world. Tell us where you're watching us from, and tell us also if you know what Stoicism is. Let's start with Donald Robertson, who teaches Stoicism in the modern age, to tell us a little bit about. I'd like to ask you, first of all, how you were attracted to Stoicism as a cognitive psychologist.
Well, initially I was interested in Greek philosophy in general, and I was very interested in meditation. I was into Buddhism, and I was interested in counselling and psychotherapy as a profession. And I always felt that I wanted to bring these different things together somehow, and it frustrated me that I couldn't find something that combined all of my interests. And then after I finished studying philosophy at university, I stumbled across Stoicism. And it's almost the only major school of ancient philosophy that we didn't really touch on in our undergraduate degree. And so then I discovered that Stoicism combined a kind of therapeutic approach that was similar to cognitive therapy, and also contemplative practices that were similar to the self-help and meditation techniques that I was interested in. So it brought everything together for me.
Now, I just want to note that cognitive behavior therapy is something that's become very popular around the world, and in fact, I think the National Health System in England is offering it for free to people, because it's been proven to be very effective and quick way of therapy. If you can, in a nutshell, tell us what it is, and then we'll move on to to Stoicism itself.
Well, cognitive behavioural therapy kind of originated in the 1960s, 1970s, and it's now the dominant evidence-based approach to modern psychotherapy. And it's particularly prominent in the UK because the National Health Service found that it was cost-effective to provide this, to fund it.
Quick results.
Yeah, it got quick results, and getting people who were depressed back into work and helping them seemed to the government to be more cost effective. So they rolled out this huge program of CBT in the UK.
Okay, so now moving on to Stoicism, can you explain to our viewers what Stoicism is in a nutshell. Can you do that? Is it possible?
Yeah, I'll have a go.
Because there's a lot to be said.
Do we want to say a little bit about the history, or
let's talk a little bit as
just
well.
get into the philosophy itself?
Both. I think whatever you feel will be relevant for our viewers to get a good understanding of what we're going to be talking about.
Well, Stoicism is a Hellenistic school of philosophy, so it originated a few generations after the execution of Socrates, and the founder of Stoicism was a Phoenician merchant called Zeno, who was shipwrecked near Athens, and he found himself in Athens. He became a Cynic philosopher originally, and he studied all of the different schools of philosophy that were available in Athens, and then he decided to develop his own philosophy. He founded the Stoic school in the middle of Athens in 301 BC. That's kind of how it originated. And the Stoic school became very popular in the Roman Empire, and so the last famous Stoic we hear about is actually the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who died in 180 AD. So the history of Stoicism spans about 500 years. It was around for a long time.
And you just wrote a book about how to think like a Roman emperor, which is based on Marcus Aurelius as well.
Based on Marcus Aurelius, but it's got lots of other stories in it about Socrates and other Greek philosophers. But it really tells the story of Marcus Aurelius' life and tries to tie that in with ideas from Stoic philosophy. Okay,
so now, if you can explain to us what Stoicism is and how you help people to apply that, combining it with CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, in their lives, because you have tens of thousands of followers and students around the world. Some of your courses have up to 85,000 students, you say?
Well, we have 8,000 students that attended our Stoic Week course this year, and we have a Facebook group that has about 45,000 people in it. And it's growing and growing and growing every year.
So there's a huge interest around the world.
Yeah. And so Stoicism, what does it really consist in? The Stoics were very heavily influenced by Socrates, and possibly were trying to kind of recapture the original philosophy of Socrates, or their interpretation of Socrates' philosophy. And their central doctrine is that virtue, or arete, is the only true good. And for the Stoics, that virtue is a form of wisdom. So it's really grasping, really knowing the difference between what's good and what's bad, what's right and wrong. And they thought that was the only truly good thing in life, and everything else was relatively indifferent. So it's what we call a virtue ethic today.
Very black and white as well.
Yeah, it's quite strict in a sense. And the reason that Stoicism has gone through a kind of resurgence in popularity, in part, is that the Stoics believed that that our emotions are fundamentally caused by our beliefs about what's good and bad, our value judgments, if you like. And we now call that idea the cognitive model of emotion. And that's the basis of cognitive therapy. That's basically what cognitive therapy is all about. So anxiety in cognitive therapy is thought, generally speaking, to be linked to the belief that something bad is going to happen, or catastrophic is going to happen, and that I won't be able to cope with it. And it might seem like a simple thing, but interpreting our emotions in terms of our underlying beliefs allows us then to question those beliefs and say, well, is that belief true or false? What's the evidence for and against it? Is it a helpful or an unhelpful belief? What alternative ways are there of looking at the same situation? And that opens up a whole battery of therapeutic techniques, and that's really what cognitive therapy is all about.
Now, in our world today, anxiety and depression are rising and rising and rising. In Greece itself, especially since the crisis kicked off around a decade ago, the use of antidepressants and the rise of unemployment, and then thus also things like suicide and the use of pharmaceuticals in general, tranquilizers, etc., have gone up incredibly. But not only in Greece, worldwide, I would say. To sound very generalistic, but also quite accurate, I would say.
Yeah.
So I guess there is a huge appeal in what you're teaching for people to embrace a modern way of healing, which is cognitive behavior therapy, together with intertwined with the teachings of people like Socrates through Stoicism. Have you have you been actually seeing what I'm saying? Have you been seeing that there is this huge problem with anxiety and with depression? And how have you been tackling it through your teachings of Stoicism?
Well, depression in particular is an epidemic, really. It's, it's an incredibly common problem these days. It becomes more of a problem every year. Anxiety disorders are also on the rise. Although some forms of anxiety are actually fairly easy for cognitive therapists to treat. For example, the treatment of phobias has about a 90% success rate. The treatment of social anxiety disorder has about a 75% success rate. But treatment of depression has about 45-50% success rate. So that's a tougher nut to crack. And one way of approaching mental health is prevention is better than cure. And that's a neglected area of mental health research that there's more and more interest in these days, because although we can provide effective therapies, it's expensive to deliver one-to-one therapy for everybody, as we're discovering in the UK. So other options people are looking at are group therapy, where you have one therapist and lots of clients in a group, which maybe can reach a wider number of people, and using e-learning as well. But also prevention through what we call resilience-building approaches. And that is where Stoicism and other forms of Greek philosophy become particularly interesting. Because Stoicism, the Stoics, the Greeks invented psychotherapy in a sense. They talk about therapy, they describe what they're doing as a psychological therapy for emotional problems. And then we rediscovered some of the basic principles in modern cognitive therapy. But Stoicism isn't just a therapy, it's a philosophy of life. It's much bigger than a therapy. And so the reason that it holds a lot of promise in particular...
Sorry.
It's all right. We're moving around. Have a seat.
Have a seat, please.
So, there's a lot of research on CBT being used for prevention, but one of the difficulties that we've discovered is that people learn CBT skills, for example, school children, and it helps to reduce their risk of developing anxiety and depression in the future. But then they seem to need booster training like every couple of years in order to maintain that resilience. And so we need to find something that's stickier and more long-lasting and more generalised than CBT. Then if we go back to the origins of CBT was inspired by Stoicism. Stoic philosophy provides some promise of giving us a permanent therapeutic approach that's lifelong and more pervasive. So the holy grail of modern psychotherapy or mental health research would be finding a resilience-building strategy that works, a preventative approach. And people are particularly interested in the idea that Stoicism might provide that.
Okay, well, if you've just tuned in, I'm Lyceum. I'm here with Donald Robertson, who is a world-acclaimed author and teacher of, and also a therapist of cognitive behavior therapy, which he combines with the teachings of Stoicism. And there's people around the world following his e-courses, as well as his workshops, his talks, his conferences that he's given a lot of. You actually were now recently also interviewed for the BBC whilst in Athens. And he's trying to, as you said yourself, trying to combine the teachings of the ancients with modern approaches to treating anxiety disorders, depression, but also to creating new ways of perceiving the constantly changing landscape of the world that we're living in. Why do you think there is such a huge rise in anxiety and in depression in the world?
Well, that's really a puzzle, actually. We don't know for sure.
There's someone fooling around.
Yeah, something. Nobody really knows for certain why there's a rise in mental health problems. But But there seems to be a kind of loss of direction and meaning that people have. There were institutions that we had in society, like Christianity, that provided people with a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning in their lives. And in modern society, that's kind of crumbled for many people. And so there's a search that people are now engaged in, I feel, to try and find something that gives their lives more meaning in a secular society. And one of the things that people often say about Stoic philosophy and Greek philosophy in general, particularly the Hellenistic schools, is that people often say they find them to offer a kind of secular alternative to Christianity, or a Western alternative, they sometimes say, to Buddhism and yoga.
There is now quite a change in the way people are looking at religion as well, worldwide, I would say. Some say it's become a little bit like a spiritual supermarket where people can go in and take a little bit of Christian ideology, a little bit of Muslim ideology, a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, energy healing, and we all create our own little combination of spiritual thought rather than following one religious faith as it used to be in the past. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and in some ways that's a return to what Athenian society was like in the time of Socrates and the Stoics. Yeah, well, the Stoic school itself is a kind of an eclectic philosophy. You know, Zeno arrived in Athens and he studied the Megarian school of philosophy, he read Xenophon's writings, he studied at the Platonic Academy, he trained as a cynic. He took bits of all of these different schools of philosophy, and some people think aspects of pre-Socratic philosophy and even Phoenician culture, and he welded it all together into what you can see as a kind of eclectic philosophy. And so particularly in the Hellenistic period, there's a lot of that goes on. And so I think that there's that kind of eclectic element to it, and the free-thinking sort of aspect of it, you know, the idea that Stoicism is a philosophy rather than a religion, although there are religious or theological aspects to it, that appeals to people today because the Stoics encourage them to think for themselves. And the Stoicism did traditionally have a strong religious element, but funnily enough, most of the people we know from our surveys that are interested in Stoicism today are agnostics or atheists. Nevertheless, they're drawn to this philosophy because it encourages them to think for themselves rather than accepting things on the basis of faith or tradition.
This is Donald Robertson. I'm Alexia Mvrazi. We're in Navarino Park in Exarchia. I'm just going to flip the camera to give you a little image of the location here. This is a community park that was made by the people of Exarchia, who are known for their anarchy and their rebellion, but actually they turned this old car park into a communal space, including a playground. And the reason we chose this spot today for our interview is that it's a place where people meet regularly, people from the neighborhood of Exarchia and all around here, to discuss initiatives for helping the homeless, the other members of their communities, even refugees. I'm here with Donald Robertson, and we're discussing a combination of what he's been teaching for many years, which is cognitive behavior therapy together with Stoicism. Now, tell us where you're watching us from, and tell us if you know anything at all about Stoicism. Have you ever... I mean, we have this phrase that, oh, yes, I've been very stoical about this. And actually, I have to be honest, for me, it's really interesting that we connected because I went through a difficult period recently, and a psychologist said to me, oh, you've been very stoical about what you went through, and that's what kept you strong throughout that time. But that's not necessarily a good thing. So can you explain that a little bit as a concept? Because it really resonated with me when I heard it said to me.
Yeah, and well, in English...
I felt proud of having been stoical, but then I realized that, yes, having been stoic can actually, in a way, make you harder and not facing the vulnerability that maybe you have to face in order to recover. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, this is a good place to actually unpack things a little bit. So in English, we have the word stoic with a lowercase s. It's like a sort of adjective or a common noun. And we also write stoic with a capital S, where it refers to the Greek school of philosophy. And this often is the case with Greek words and philosophies. So Academic today means something slightly different from what it meant in the ancient world. Epicurean today just means somebody that enjoys food a lot. It's different from the Epicurean philosophy. Cynical today means something different from the cynic philosophy. Skeptical today means something different from the skeptical philosophy of the ancient world. And Stoicism has over time sort of degraded its meaning and turned into something much more simplistic that in some ways is quite antagonistic to what the ancient philosophy represented. So we have Stoic, lowercase, just means being tough-minded and having a stiff upper lip, maybe being unemotional. So people say that Brits are Stoic. We have that poster that says keep calm and carry on, being Stoic about things.
And you know the Greek version of that, so to interject. I can't keep, it says keep calm and ... I can't keep calm, I'm Greek. Anyway,
so this is lowercase Stoic. And then we have this huge school of philosophy that survived for 500 years and was quite expansive. It was known for studying logic and metaphysics as well as ethics and providing this kind of therapy.
Wow.
So we have this big tradition, and then we have this simplistic concept of personality trait. Now, okay, diving into, we'll say something technical for a minute about the philosophy to unpack it a little bit. The Stoics actually distinguished between 3 different types of emotion, like good, bad, and different emotions. So they thought there were unhealthy passions, excessive, irrational emotions that we experience in life, and they thought we need to do something about those, but not just suppress them or avoid them, like lowercase Stoicism kind of implies, but transform them through challenging the underlying beliefs and value judgments that cause them into healthy emotions. The ancient Stoics called them eupatheiai, the healthy or the good emotions. And the Stoics also recognize that there are some emotions that are outside our control, that are kind of reflex-like or automatic, and they call those propatheiai, the first responses or the first movements that we experience.
The animal instinct.
The animal instincts.
The primal.
Yeah, which we share with animals. And the Stoics thought it's really important to view those with indifference and to accept them and to treat them as inevitable, so not to struggle against them. And that's actually the opposite of what people often mean by lowercase Stoicism. So I think that the ancient Stoics has a much more complex and rounded and a healthier attitude towards mental health, transforming our negative emotions by challenging the underlying beliefs that cause them, not just trying to suppress them.
And accepting.
And also accepting our feelings insofar as they're beyond our direct control. And actually, I should say a little bit more about the kind of basic introduction to what Stoicism is about. There's another way of approaching the subject. So one of the most famous Stoics is Epictetus. He was the most famous Roman Stoic. And we have his work surviving today, the Discourses, and a small handbook that summarises his teaching. And the handbook begins by saying, the first sentence of it is, some things are up to us and other things are not. So one of the basic principles of Roman Stoicism was to learn to make a sharper distinction between things that are under your direct control and things that aren't, and to take more ownership and more responsibility for your own actions and your own voluntary thinking, and to be more accepting of things insofar as they're outside of your direct control. And I think that's a very healthy psychological strategy. It's one that modern psychologists find very relatable. It holds a lot of promise as a cognitive skill, actually. And that's a very simple way of introducing what Stoicism is about in practice, I think.
If you just tuned in, you're watching Greek City Times. I'm Alexia Mvrazi. I'm here with Donald Robertson, who is just here in Athens for the first time ever, although he's been teaching about Greek philosophy for how many years now?
Gosh, about 15 years roughly.
And he's teaching people around the world. He was telling me earlier that very few of his students are actually Greek. So you're addressing Greek City Times has around 200,000 followers worldwide. So I think it would be interesting to hear from our viewers right now, whoever's watching, to tell us a little bit about your own connection with ancient Greek Stoicism philosophies. Do you understand it? Do you know it? Why aren't more Greeks learning about Stoicism and what you're teaching, how to combine it with the psychology of that is attached to more modern healing techniques, medical techniques, and how it can help them in their daily lives today? Why do you think that is, that there aren't that many Greeks attending your courses, whilst there are people from all over the world who are?
I don't know. I do wonder whether Greeks maybe prefer to study and discuss the philosophy in the Greek language, perhaps, whereas what we do is all in the English language. Maybe that's a factor, or maybe it just hasn't caught on in Greece in the same way that it has in Canada and England and in the United States. So those are areas where, for some reason, Stoicism...
Oh, okay, we disconnected there for a moment.
And maybe, actually, this is a question for you, that perhaps is cognitive therapy not taking hold as much in Greece as it perhaps has in North America and the UK?
I think it's something that, as far as I know, it is something that Greeks have been introduced to in the last, say, decade, but maybe it's not as well known as it is in those countries that you mentioned.
That could be a factor.
Now, I want to go back to you, though, because as I just said, you've just come to Athens for the first time. I want to hear about your experiences in Athens. Let me flip the camera now and focus just on you.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. So, sorry. We are here in Navarino Park. And, okay. So tell us a little bit about your experience of Athens as a philosopher and as a writer and as someone who's been studying ancient Greece for so long.
Well, it's wonderful to be in Athens, and it's a wonderful, wonderful experience for me to be here and to be kind of going around and seeing some of the archaeological sites.
Where have you been so far?
I've been everywhere. No, I've been to a lot. I've been to a lot of places. So I went to the first place I had to go was to the ruins of the Stoicism, where Stoicism originated, and I've been to the Acropolis, I've been to the Lyceum, I've been to the Academy, I've been to Delphi. So I went to all of the kind of obvious philosophical sites, and at Delphi I went to a couple of days ago, and that obviously was a very kind of awe-inspiring, almost kind of cinematic, like an alien landscape is how I would describe it. And I was saying earlier that the legend is that Apollo slayed a dragon there, and I could completely imagine that being there. If I was going to slay a dragon, I'd go to Delphi to do it. And it really, it helps me kind of visualize the stories relating to Socrates in particular, but Greek philosophy in general, make things more concrete. And that's part of what I've tried to do in my writing and teaching, is approach the philosophy through anecdotes and stories about the famous figures in its history. And
you also went to Platos Academy, you
Yes.
were telling me earlier. Can you tell us your feelings about that? Because I think it's very important to get that. Okay, we're back. So we were talking about Platos Academy in Athens, where you visited recently, and I guess you must have been very excited to actually finally go there. So what was the feeling when you went there?
Well, I'm reluctant to say this, but I felt a little bit sad. And partly that came from, I went to the digital exhibit, the museum, and there's a video kind of showing some of the local residents talking about the area and how they hadn't really realised it was even connected with philosophy or with Plato. They just called it the ruins.
This is Plato's Academy we're talking about.
Plato's Academy. And I kind of thought, I hope that one day more could be done at that location to regenerate it, and there should be like a university there. The Academy is absolutely the most important historical site in the history of European intellectual culture. And for many centuries it was perceived as like the seat of all learning. And it's an interesting place to visit now, but I kind of feel like it would be great if some of that could be brought back and more could be done with that location.
So what are the other locations in Athens that are very important for you to see?
Well,
in relation to your own life and your own teachings and writings?
Well, it was interesting for me to go to the Piraeus and to Delphi and the Lyceum as well. I was saying earlier that people connect the Lyceum in particular with Aristotle and his school, but there's a lot more to the history of it than that. Before Aristotle, the Sophists used to teach at the Lyceum, and Socrates used to go to the Lyceum a lot, and the Stoic philosophers later also. Chrysippus lectured at the Lyceum, we're told, as well. So there's often more that went on in these locations than people kind of assume at first glance. And for me, the Lyceum is connected with the Sophists and Socrates as well. So it has a richer more interesting history than it might seem at first.
What about your impressions of modern Athens in contrast with the Athens that maybe you've visualized through your readings?
Well, I haven't had as much chance to discuss philosophy with modern Athenians, unfortunately, so hopefully I'll get more opportunity to do that. I really enjoyed being in Athens. It's kind of I live in Canada. I live in Nova Scotia, and in many ways, like, Athens is very very different. It reminds me a little bit more, actually, of London. It's quite a busy place and kind of chaotic in some respects, but in a good way, in a vibrant way. I feel like there's a lot of creativity here.
Yes, there is.
A lot of diversity, and so I like that. I like that. Also, the way the streets are labyrinthine in some parts of Athens, and it's everything's kind of. That's more interesting to me.
Have you thought of teaching what you're teaching here in Athens, of actually organizing some kind of conference or workshop?
Well, there's a website where people go, and there's a map where they can say where they're located, and if they're interested in setting up a local group. There are local groups all over the world for discussing Stoic philosophy. There isn't one in Athens. But there are people. I know. I know. This feels wrong. There isn't, as far as I understand it, there isn't one in Athens.
What's going on, people?
But I'm told there are Epicurean groups here. So come on, we need to.
We like to eat, but not.
Yeah, if the Epicureans can do it, so can the Stoics, right?
Well, it's what I was telling Mr. Robertson before, that in Greece we have ambelophilosophia, which is when we drink wine and discuss and start philosophizing, but it's inspired by the wine. But that's not exactly the same thing.
Well, the Stoics drank
wine as well.
You can have great
discussions, I mean. But
people think that the Stoics perhaps...
Bonjour to Monsieur Pierre-Alain Bouchard. Where are you watching us from? Anyway.
I was going to say that people think the Stoics would be quite abstinent, but they were kind of known for drinking wine as well. Chrysippus, the third head of the Stoic school, and perhaps the second most important Stoic after its founder, Zeno, reputedly liked to drink a lot. And he died because when he got very drunk on wine and died.
He was an alcoholic, basically.
Yeah, he drank. That's some
he
people
liked to drink a lot.
Imply that he drank a lot. He died laughing at one of his own jokes about a donkey.
Do you know the joke?
I don't know. I think it.
Okay, this is weird. We're having real connection problems here. Maybe it's the anarchic energy of Navarino Park. We shouldn't be broadcasting within here. We're in Navarino Park in Exarchia. And I'm here with Donald Robertson. If you've just tuned in, I think we'll have to start concluding our conversation in a moment, but it's been so interesting talking with you. But I do want to hear more about this laughing to death story you're telling us.
Well, my
about.
recollection is that this donkey had eaten some figs, and Chrysippus said maybe he'd like some wine to wash it down as well, and then he died laughing at his own joke about a donkey. But again, that may be from a satire. We were talking earlier about some of these little stories and fragments, little anecdotes, or maybe folklore, or they come from satires. So we don't know if that's true, or if it was just a kind of joke that people were making at his expense, because they thought the Stoics are known for being kind of wrongly, perhaps, for being unemotional, and they wanted to say that Chrysippus had actually died from a fit of laughter.
Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We hope that you've been enjoying this conversation. We've been in the center of noisy 2018 Athens. I'm here with Donald Robertson. I'm very honored to be interviewing you today.
Well, delighted to be.
And it's really a joy to meet you because I've heard so much about you over the years. And I was introduced to you recently by a friend who has been following your course. Can you tell us a little bit about this course, which is how to practice Stoicism in your daily life?
The Stoic Week?
Because some of our viewers, the Stoic Week, might be interested in trying it out as well.
Well, it's now run by a non-profit organisation that's based in the UK, and by a multidisciplinary team of volunteers. There's about 6 or 8 of us. The group changes a little bit over time, but we have classicists, academic philosophers, psychologists, cognitive therapists. And I was one of the founder members, Professor Christopher Gill, who's Emeritus Professor of Ancient thought at Exeter University in England, was the founder of it. And so we have this project where we have conferences every year. We have a blog with 500 articles about Stoicism on it, written by dozens of ordinary people around the world. And we have a course called Stoic Week, and we gather research data from it. And people can do it for 7 days every year. We just finished running it, unfortunately, we just missed it, but we'll run again next year. And they do a different Stoic contemplative practice and different readings each day, and they discuss those with other people around the world. And then we gather a lot of research data from them, and actually from that data, we can see that people benefited. They reduced their negative emotions, increased their positive emotions, and their life satisfaction increased using established scales that are used for measuring cognitive therapy, so we can compare the results.
And do the results last, or is it something that maybe over time wears away again as we re-enter our usual wiring?
Well, that's something we have to research more. We're doing pilot studies at the moment. We have a bigger course called Stoic Mindfulness and Resilience Training that lasts 4 weeks. It's more carefully controlled. And we've been running that for a few years, maybe about 1,000 people at a time.
What is it? How do people find out more about that?
If they go to the organisation's website, which is Modern Stoicism, all one word, modernstoicism.com, you'll find all the information there. And Stoic Mindfulness and Resilience Training gives us more robust data, and we found that when people did more Stoicism, they got more benefits. So there was about a 25-30% shift in these measures of mood. And recently, we did a follow-up, a long-term follow-up, or a 3-month follow-up anyway. And we found something quite shocking, actually, which is normally you'd expect the improvements to diminish to some extent over time. But Tim LeBon, our researcher, found virtually no change in the improvements that people got from SMRT. So it's the shorter end of the follow-up spectrum. Ideally it would be a year, but to begin with, we did a 3-month follow-up. And in 3 months, there was no dropping off in the improvements at all, which is very promising. So again, we need to do more research on the longer-term effects of these Stoic practices. And also, I'd like to do a head-to-head trial comparing it against Epicureanism. That would be, a head-to-head battle between ancient Greek philosophy. Would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. If you can give also our viewers any more reference points of how they can find out more about your work.
Well, my website is just Donald Robertson, my name, Donald Robertson, all one word, .name, N-A-M-E. It's a bit of an unusual one. And then modernstoicism.com is the Modern Stoicism organisation, of which I'm one of the members.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And also there's a lot of video interviews that you've done that people can find on YouTube, as well as lots of essays and articles that you've written. And can you tell us a little bit about your books as well, just before we go?
I've written
just to remind our viewers.
6 books, and they are on cognitive therapy, on clinical hypnosis as well, and on Stoicism. So I wrote a self-help book called Teach Yourself Stoicism and the Art of Happiness, and that's just come out as a 2nd edition. I wrote a book called The Philosophy of CBT that's a little bit more academic, and that's about to come out in a 2nd edition. And I've just finished writing a book called How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, that's about the life and philosophy of Marcus Aurelius, and there's bits of cognitive therapy that run through that as well, and that book is due to come out in April.
Okay, thank you very, very much. You've been watching an interview in Navarino Park in Exarchia in the center of Athens with Donald Robertson and myself, Alexia Mvrazi. I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. There's been a lot of very, very interesting information here in this last 20 minutes or so. Some top 3 Stoicism tips for our viewers.
Top 3. Actually, I'll give you 4 from Socrates.
Okay.
And in the Republic, in Plato's Republic, Socrates says that a wise man is very patient or resilient in the face of adversity. And he's talking to Glaucon about this. And he says these are the 4 reasons why, and he gives a list of 4 cognitive strategies, if I can remember what they are. So the first one, Socrates says, is that the wise man assumes that he doesn't know for sure in any misfortune what's going to turn out good and what's going to turn out bad in the long run. And so he bears that in mind, and he doesn't get as upset about it or worry about it as much, kind of suspends judgment. And the second one is that he reminds himself that it doesn't do him any good to get upset about things. It does more harm than good. And the third one is that he reminds himself that in the grand scheme of things, when we do the view from above and look at the bigger picture in a more comprehensive way, there's nothing worth getting that upset about, says Socrates, when we look at it from a broader perspective. And the fourth one, he says, is that the more upset we get when we worry about things and grieve about them excessively, he says it's appropriate to get upset to some extent, but not excessively. He says getting upset too much prevents us from doing the very thing that's most required in the face of a crisis, which is to think clearly and solve the problem.
So it's good to have some catharsis, but don't let yourself break down to the point of inaction. Thank you very, very much for all this beautiful wisdom and information. This is Donald Robertson. I'm Lyceum. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. Do comment and let us know where you've been watching us from and how much you know about Stoic philosophy, and if you've ever tried following any of these courses that Mr. Robertson mentioned, and if so, what your experiences were. Thank you very much. Bye.